Hello, everyone. An early Shabbat Shalom. As we admit folks, I invite you to share where in the chat you're joining us from. And I do tend to keep what's happening in the world um, out of our Torah study, of course. We take our Torah study out into the world. But this week has had some mixed and hopeful news. So, of course, as we begin the book of Exodus, the book of Shemot, we are certainly thinking of all of the hostages and praying for their safe return quickly. Today, we are joined by Rabbi Asher Lopatin, who is the Director of Community Affairs at the Jewish Federation of Great Ann Arbor and the founding rabbi of Kehillat Eitz Chaim of Detroit. He is joining us from right outside of Detroit. And he's been a longtime contributor to My Jewish Learning's Daily Dose of Talmud and has led some of our Kaddish minyanim, but we are excited to have him start us off as we begin an exciting new book of the Torah. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Mara. Yeah, I'm the Kaddish Minion ringer. Usually I fill in, and I'm filling in today, I think, or I'm on the rotation today. This is my first time doing the Torah portion, the Parsha, for MJL. And I'm excited to be here. And Mara, as you mentioned, this is the book of Exodus, of leaving Egypt, of getting out of Egypt. We ended up, last week in Vaychi, the very end. It's kind of it ends with and Mara, I mentioned that I'll start with Shemot, but let's start with the very end of Vaychi, which is chapter 50, verse 24, 25, 26. That it's kind of sad that Yosef is going to die, and uses the language of pakod yifkod, that God will get you out, will remember you. Lifkod is like to remember. God will remember you, but Joseph dies, and the last three words of the book of Genesis, of Breshit, are Vayisem Ba'aron b'Mitzrayim, or Vayisem, I should say. Yeah, there you go. Thanks so much, Mara. Joseph died at the age of 110 years, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. Vayisem Ba'aron b'Mitzrayim. So, oi, that's an interesting way to end off the book. And so we're really hoping, we pray that our hostages come home. And now getting into the Parsha, what's going to happen to the children of Israel? They're stuck in Egypt, and that's where the book opens. But I want to mention that the first the seventh verse, it is the seventh verse of chapter 1. Mara, thank you so much. This is amazing. Paru Vayishritzu, they were fertile, they're prolific, they multiplied, and it seems everything's good. Increased very greatly. Vayatzmu bim'od ma'od, and vayatzmu can mean that they increased, physically, that more of them, but it also atzum means like very mighty, powerful, giant. And so yeah, and so otzma is sort of power. So they increase very greatly. So by the way, Mary, I got a little bit of guidance that to go through the whole parsha, but kind of we know basically. So let me go through the parsha and get right back to it. So basically, a new king comes in Egypt. He places taxes. He's able to, by taxing the people, he turns the Israelites into slaves, and it's terrible. And then Moshe happens to be born, and not only does he turn the Israelites into slaves, but he wants to kill all the males and Moshe has to be hidden, but Moshe's adopted by the daughter of Pharaoh, and he grows up, but he still grows up. Actually, he's nursed and trained by his Jewish mother, by Yocheved, by his Israelite mother. And so he goes out and he sees that there's injustice, that an overlord is beating up a poor Jewish slave, and he kills that person. And then he is going to be killed because he did that. I guess they think that he's too pro-Jewish. So he runs away to Midian. He meets Zipporah. He meets the Midianite Jethro's daughters. He marries Zipporah, and he finds the burning bush, 10 Commandments, the great classic movie. And God says, I'm appointing you to take the Jews out of Egypt. And Moshe, of course, resists it and says, I'm looking in the chats. The God says, I want you to do it. Moshe says, who am I? I'm a nobody. There's the old joke, that the rabbi and the cantor are looking, someone in the congregation says, oh, I'm a nobody, I'm nothing, I'm a nobody. And the rabbi says to the cantor, look at him, look who thinks he's a nobody. What a chutzpah. But anyway, Moshe had that chutzpah to say he's a nobody. And God says, I don't care, I'm taking you out. And God gets frustrated with Moshe eventually and says, okay, I'm going to send you Aaron, your older brother, who's going to help you out. By the way, Miriam plays a big role, his older sister also. But so Moses meets with Aaron, and they go to the Israelites, and they say, we're going to take you out of Egypt. Woo! Everyone's excited and everyone believes. And Pharaoh says, this is ridiculous. No way. I'm going to make it even worse for the Israelites. And that's kind of where we end. Moshe says, what is going on? You made it worse. I told you so. It's always risky saying I told you so to God, but that's exactly what Moshe does. And God says, don't worry, I'm going to get them out of Egypt. They'll get out. So that's the summary of the portion. But so if we go back to the seventh verse, and it's pointed out here, it already says Paru vayishrutzu. It already talks about numbers. So in some ways, Vayatzmu Ma'od, that seventh verse, they increased very greatly, really might imply that they did very well. And we know from last week's portion that Joseph fed his family really well. They had a good deal going, whereas the rest of the Egyptians became sharecroppers. So he's everyone's doing really well when we come into the book of Shemot, and suddenly things turn around. Rashi and the Midrashim, is it a new king? Is it just a king that changed his mind? A pharaoh that just changed his mind? But in any case, all the implications is that it says Lo Yada et Yosef, didn't know Joseph, but it really could be Yada in the Bible. A lot of times is didn't love Joseph, didn't recognize Joseph, so didn't realize the goodness of Joseph. So I kind of think that it's such a contemporary question that we have here, and I'm thinking of Franklin Foyer's article in The Atlantic. You might have the end of the golden era for Jews in America. And I think it's always a question in this time of heightened anti-Semitism. And I keep this very much as a question. Yeah, Arnold, yes, yes, I think it's the first example. Well, you know what? Earlier in Genesis, is this Arnold as the first example of anti-Semitism? Earlier on, we had the tension between Isaac and the people in Gerar, and they said, get out of here because we're jealous of you. Oh, by the way, Arnold, it's credit to you. That's the same word, atzum, bim'od me'od, that we have in verse 7. Ki atzamta mimenu me'od, I think is the same word that the Philistines in Gerar were jealous of Isaac, so they kicked him out. It depends how you define anti-Semitism, or you look at the cause of anti-Semitism. but there are some people, I think even Mark Twain was part of it, that felt that anti-Semitism was about jealousy of Jews or Israelites or of Hebrews, let's say. So that definitely happened there. Here it looks like it's because of fear, right? So if you look in verse 9, it's that word again, assume they're greater than us. But verse 10 looks like in the event of war, they may join our enemies in fighting. And so that seems an idea of fear. So different elements of anti-Semitism, hatred of the Jews, but yeah, I love these. Everyone's, I hope, reading all the comments. So it's, I think it's a very powerful question for the era we're living in now, in let's say even America, let alone Europe or elsewhere, Australia. We massive amounts of anti-Semitism. Things are challenging or have been challenging on campus life for Jews to be very open with their Jewishness. And I always ask myself, and again, this is a question like, is this Germany 1932 or 31, right before the rise of Hitler, where, we've lived in this land for so long, it's been so good, we're so powerful, we're so successful, nothing can happen to us, or not? I mean, we're not. I don't think so. Otherwise, I'd leave. But that's always a question to ask. And the so that is sort of this is the case, but in Exodus, that's very much the case of, I think, the Israelites. Uh, Everything is going great, and then things turn around very quickly. And I think that was what many of the Jews felt in Europe in the 30s. I mean, not everywhere was going great, and there was anti-Semitism, but if things really turned. So it's a very contemporary, if it's not contemporary of 2025, it's certainly contemporary of the 20th century. And one other thing that's interesting is that the population growth of Jews in Poland in the 19th and early 20th century exploded. So there were so many, tragically, 6 million were murdered, and millions from Poland. But it is interesting that that was a time, it wasn't a time of great wealth or all sorts of things. And there was a lot of huge anti-Semitism in Poland, but it was huge, huge, huge growth. Okay, so we got a lot of things interesting all over the place in the chat, and but I want to move on to the next point, and that is I love these women. Again, this stuff is so contemporary, it's so relevant. So if we go to verse 15, this is where Pharaoh wants to kill all the males, because according to Rashi, the Midrashim, the traditions, he sees that a male will save the Jewish people, and so he wants to kill all the males. So yeah, really, these are tough questions people are asking. I'm glad, and we just have to ask these questions. So he wants, but this is incredible. The next verses 17, 18, and 19. Whatever, all these verses, 15 through 19. That First of all, it's incredible because I have to say that women are not always so prominent in the Bible. There are many women, and I think women, it's incredible. We have to really see them more. Sometimes the way we read Tanakh, I don't think we see women enough. Professor or Rabbi Jane Canarak has a very good article in Sources in the Hartman Journal called Sources, where she says we have to really read the Talmud differently, and then we will see women a lot more prominent than we thought. But it's just the way we've been learning it. But in any case, you cannot deny that the previous portions which deal with Joseph and his brothers, especially the last 2 or 3 portions that end Genesis, there are no women, barely women. Maybe Serach, daughter of Asher, is mentioned, and Dinah is mentioned earlier. So here, the real heroes of this story are women. I said this, if any of you was on the Kaddish Minyan, I mentioned this. The real heroines, heroes of the story are the women in many different ways. First of all, verse 17, they don't follow the edict of Pharaoh to kill the men. I mean, it's incredible brutality, killing these babies. It's really, I mean, sometimes it's like so distant, the Bible, but the Tanakh, but so they didn't do it. They let the boys live. Now, the Midrashim, the traditions say not only let the boys live, they helped them out. They went way and beyond, not just sneakily avoiding killing them, but really helping them. And that's what Vatechayena looks like active. It's not velo himitu. They didn't kill them, velo hargu or something, but it says Vatechayena. They really gave them life. So here are these heroic women who are resisting the Pharaoh. We know all the sun god and all that stuff around Pharaoh, how powerful he was, not powerful enough to take on individuals who stand up for something. And here, I think it's specifically women because they're always considered weaker and disempowered. And here it's incredible, these women. Now, I love it. The Midrash says, these women, who are they? They didn't say their names. They are, it says their names, Shifra and Pua. But who is Shifra and Pua? They are their names. They're Miriam and Yocheved. Yocheved is Moshe's mother. Miriam is Moshe's sister. So that's kind of like the midrash. Someone earlier asked, like, what's that asterisk in the in Sefaria, and I didn't answer it because I don't know. But the midrash, even if the midrash doesn't know, the midrash comes up with an answer. So if I were writing midrash, I'd come up with a midrash of what that asterisk is. I'm sure there is. It's going somewhere on the bottom. But a lot of times the asterisk means that they're different suggestions for. Oh, here we go. Wow, Mara, thank you. Clicked on it. So there we go. I don't need to give a medrash. But so I think it's powerful to think about. This is Moshe's mom. That's where Moshe comes from. Moshe comes from a woman, Yocheved, who resisted Pharaoh. This is truth to power. This is so much of what we need now. People not speaking out. A lot of that's sort of wicked. If you see the movie, if you see the play, a lot of it is, speaking out. And honestly, in this world, I think there's just too little of that. So these are the amazing women. And not only do they speak out, but if we go down to verse 18 and 19, they, well, this is interesting. So on the one hand, they resist Pharaoh and they don't do what Pharaoh says. They're super courageous. By the way, it's really been documented that there was almost no resistance in Germany to Hitler and his edicts, to the Nazis. The only two protests that I'm aware of, and I think historians are one was for the where they euthanized kids who were developmentally disabled and handicapped in other ways. There was a whole program of that, and people resisted, and the Catholic Church spoke up about that, and that program was ended. The other protests, and Rabbi J.J. Schachter talks about this. It was another article in the Atlantic about the non-Jewish wives of Jewish men in Berlin when their husbands were taken by the Nazis to be shipped off. They were imprisoned in Berlin. These women came out and protested, and they let these husbands go. These are non-Jewish women who and under pressure, they didn't kill all the women, gun them down. I guess in Tiananmen Square, that's what happened. But in Germany, they let them out. What it says really is that these dictatorships, and I'm not, who am I? I'm not living in a dictatorship, but they are susceptible to, you can resist. I mean, look at Anne Frank and Meep, who hid them. And, and again, yes, Nazis killed a lot of people that hid Jews and resisted, but it's an interesting thing. There are no real protests in open in Germany, and I can be corrected for that, but that's my understanding. So the women resist, but they're smart, they're clever. But tomorrow in verse 19, they don't say, Pharaoh, we hate you and we hate your edicts and we resist it. They say that, we couldn't do it because the women, before we can make it, they give birth. So, there's this element of courage and there's an element of smarts, and they don't contradict each other. A lot of time people say, we will, I want to be smart about it. Courageous versus smart, foolhardy versus smart. But here it's like, no, you can combine the two. There's certain things you have to do. You have to show courage sometimes, but you can do it with brilliance sometimes. I see some of the I love this conversation of anti-Semitism because, again, I love it. Personally, I love it when the words of Torah jump to us and don't dictate how we're supposed to think. The rabbis in the Talmud never, they interpreted the Torah like crazy. So I'm not saying that what we're reading here is going to dictate public policy, but it will get us to think about things and to raise questions and to struggle with things. That's what Torah is really meant to do, and to guide us and guide us in our conversations. So, at the end of the day, God was nice to them. Everything worked out well. It's a little mini resistance story. So, and now I wanted to go to another contemporary issue, and this is when Moshe, Moshe, I don't want to do this. Oh, well, I can't ignore sorry. Oh, we're gonna go out of order because it's another powerful woman. And this is this is chapter 4. It's great. Chapter 4, verse 27. This is like the craziest, I guess I'm trying to think of the craziest stories in the Torah. This is one of them. So finally, Moshe and God, they work out. Moshe's gonna go, and Moshe's gonna go, and he's gonna try to get the people out of Israel. But so now, right? Yes. So he. Oh, I apologize. I'm on verse 24. Verse 24. So he goes out. First of all, I love it. Oh, a Malone. What is it translated as encampment? It's a hotel. They stayed at a Hilton. I mean, come on. Let's get this a little bit contemporary. Yeah, let's see what that. But anyway, I'm very happy. I know. I imagine they did not have Hiltons or, Hyatts. Let's make it Jewish. It's a Hyatt. They didn't have Hyatts there, but okay, let's say they wherever they stayed. I like it that I can relate more in the hotel. And also, one of the challenges was that Moshe, instead of getting to Egypt right away to do his commandment, he says, okay, well, let's make a little vacation out of this trip from Midian to Egypt. Let's see, we'll stay in a nice hotel, a pool, we'll take it easy. So who knows? But this is crazy. God just said, you're the one, Moshe, you're the one to take them out of Egypt. And God wants to kill, Yud Ke Vav Ke, that's God. Doesn't get any more God than the Tetragrammaton. So God wanted to kill him. And so once again, woman to the rescue. Yes, there's an interesting halachic Jewish legal discussion about whether women can be mohalot, can be do circumcisions, can be a moil, a mohelet, and let me give this verse insert. It isn't clear what this verse means, but it's definitely Zipporah's doing something, and she's definitely doing the circumcision. So even the opinions that say women should not do it, they have to argue, how did she do it? Maybe she facilitated it. She called the moil. This hotel was a very fancy full-service hotel, and it had a moil on demand. But in any case, uh, she is the one who does this, and she is she's a Midianite. Now, in those days when Jews got married to Gentiles, they converted, let's say, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. According to the rabbis, they went to mikvah, they converted. By the way, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov also converted, went to a mikvah. But later on, we see that in way later on in the portion of Pinchas, right before that, the end of Balak, in the book of Numbers, the tribe of Shimon says, "Oh, Moshe, you married a Midianite. So I can marry Midianite now. I can sleep with a Midianite." But first of all, Zipporah agreed to go with Moses to Egypt, to that place of slavery, and she knew what fate she was getting. So, I can't answer these. These are Rashi. I'll give a little bit of Rashi. Anyway, this is an incredible woman. Now, let me say actually two things. One, like a little controversial. MJ, we don't like controversy, but it won't be political controversial. That years ago, the Reform movement saluted the honored I don't know, the Rosh Hashanah or something, as a movement, the non-Jewish spouses of Jews who were committed to raising the kids Jewish, and who would schlep the kids to Hebrew school and the shul, and to recognize that there are relationships where there's a Jew and a non-Jew of marriages, but to recognize that these are incredible people. And so I'm Orthodox, we Orthodox, and because the law is no intermarriage, but I think it's important, and again, it's certainly the rabbis and the tradition says, no, Tzipporah converted. She was as Jewish as anyone else. Okay, but I think there's a kind of a beautiful view if you don't see it that way, and you see that Zipporah is still the Midianite. And remember, it was Moshe who was distant from his people, who had run away and all that, to Midian. So, in any case, she is the one who takes charge. And Chatan Damim, Rashi kind of tries to say, oh, because of the blood of the circumcision that we didn't do for our son, and this is Gershom, you are going to cause the death of my husband. And that's the next verse in 26. Bridegroom of blood because of the circumcision, meaning that because of circumcision, you would have killed my groom, my husband. So there are midrashim, there are traditions that say that they decided, because Moshe married a Midianite and the Midianites did not circumcise their kids, they decided, and he was Jewish or Israelite, where they did, Moses was, so they said, okay, we'll split it. This was like, if you ever watched Little House on the Prairie many years ago. So there was an intermarriage there, and they had twins, and they said, oh, that's beautiful. We'll raise one Christian and one Jewish. I'm not recommending that, but that's sort of what maybe Moshe and Zipporah decided to do, and God was not happy about that. I wonder if this story is best sort of interpreted as this is an incredible wife that Moshe has. So Moshe has an incredible mother. Remember Yocheved, who is one of the midwives, according to the Midrash, who stands up. And not only that, but she also hides Moses. I skipped that whole part where she hides him and puts him in a little, raft and in the river. And so, incredible mother. The dad, always worry, dads are very important. Don't get me wrong, I'm a dad, but the dad is whatever, he's around. But the mother is important. The sister, certainly Miriam, is so important in his life because she's the one who watches him. According to the Midrash, by the way, really great tradition that she told her dad, Dad, you have to have more kids. I know they're killing the male kids, but you have to have more kids. So that's the Midrash. So Miriam was the reason that Moshe was born. And then, of course, watched Moshe. And then the reason Moshe remained Jewish, because we don't have to get to that verse, but that was, she said to Pharaoh's daughter, that's way before, so we're okay. But she's okay. Well, since we're talking about Miriam, let's find that verse. That's in chapter 2. Yeah, let's see, chapter 2, verse 7. Sorry, chapter 2, verse 7. So Miriam, his sister, says, "Hey, should I go get you a Hebrew nurse to suckle the child for you?" And she said, because according to the Midrash, Moshe refused to drink from a non-Jew. I'm only Jewish milk, Jewish mother's milk. So she did. And then in verse 9, so the Miriam brings the baby to Yocheved, to Moshe's mother, and she nurses him, but not only nurses him with milk, but with Torah and with morality and with identity. You are a Jew, you're an Israelite. So these women, play such a role. And if we go back to chapter 4, verse 25 and 26. So there we see that his wife plays such an important role. This is kind of a little bit of
Apologies, I got mixed up. Did you say chapter 4 or chapter 2?
You got it. Yeah, chapter 4, verse 26, 25, 26.
Thank you. We're getting a little Safaria tutorial today.
Amazing. Yeah, this is great. Okay, so so she did it, and she did the bris, and we're all happy, and Zipporah's there. For some reason, she doesn't then apparently follow him to Egypt because Aaron says don't. But the next verse, I'm glad we're in the next verse. Verse 27. He speaks to Aaron and he says, and Aaron kisses him. And Aaron's so happy. Aaron's happy. Aaron hears that Moshe, his younger brother, is going to be the point man for this, for getting the Jews out of Egypt. And he's not jealous. So if we go back a little bit, to chapter 4, chapter 4, verse 14. This is so great. So don't worry, men. We're not only going to talk about the women. There are some good men here also. So God is angry because Moshe still says, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Actually, Mary, if we go back to verse 13, verse 11. This is great. This somewhere in the chat, someone said, oh, I was fired for illicit behavior. I don't think so. But whoever Shemos is. So the Misam Pela Adam. So someone in the notes before said that you can't talk logic to anti-Semites, which I think is a lot there. It's a good point. But but misam pela adam. But God, sometimes you can't even talk logic to other people, which is a beautiful, beautiful idea, and difficult, sad, because you think if you're eloquent like a Churchill or something, you could persuade people. But mi sampela adam. So God in verse 11 says something so beautiful. Who gives human speech? Who makes them dumb or deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, God? So God thinks that, look, I'm going to tell Moshe it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And Moshe doesn't listen. So Moshe in verse 13 says, no, you know what? Send someone else. So it's frustrating for God. And it's, again, I like it that we get frustrated sometimes. You say the most eloquent things, and it doesn't have any impression. When I was like a kid in Newton for my bar mitzvah, I remember thinking that if I could give the sermon, the incredible sermon, I would make everyone frum. I'd make everyone religious. And, now 60, I know a little bit better. That doesn't work that way. So God learns that also. But in any case, okay, that doesn't work. So then in verse 14, on the bottom here, by Haraf Hashem Moshe, God speaks to Moshe and says, look, I'm going to bring along Aaron, your brother, the Levite. And the important thing is the end of this pasuk, the most of the he's coming to you. He will be happy to see you. And so I don't know who this Shemos character is, but okay.
He's not here anymore.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. This is such a beautiful idea of a not zero sum. Aaron is an incredible character because he's willing to accept his role and understand that his younger brother has a more important role in this world than he does. And Moshe is worried. Martha, good point. So Moshe is worried that his brother will be upset. And God says, no, he's going to be joyous. And that's what we saw that he kisses him in the next, like towards in chapter, in verse 27, just towards the end of this chapter. Yes, Aharon eventually becomes a Kohen. And Rashi says, the Midrash says that we saw before God is angry at Moshe in verse 14. God gets angry at Moshe. And Rashi, the Midrash that he quotes says, the tradition says that normally when God gets angry, we see a result of his anger. But we don't see it here, right? We just see that, okay, I'll send you Aaron. So the Midrash says that's where Aaron ultimately became the Kohen. So originally it was going to be in Moshe's children, and Moshe was going to have the kahuna. But because Moshe did not, so what? I mean, God's angry at Moshe because he has no confidence. I think the other idea really is that to lead the kahuna is supposed to be a celebration of life and teaching about life. And the message of Moshe feels it's a little zero sum world. Like if I benefit, then you lose. And the attitude that God wants for the Kohanim is that we can all win. It's a win-win world. It's a positive sum game. And that's why it's so important that Aaron is so happy and joyous when he sees Moshe. And Moshe really was hesitant. And the truth is, a lot of this can be explained not just because of Moshe's humility, but also because Moshe didn't want to upstage his brother, his older brother. And the idea is we have to all do what we can do best and not always worry. Yeah, Moses is younger. And in fact, that's confirmed later on in Parashat Bo and in portion of Bo, where it gives Aaron's age. Aaron was like 3 years older than Moshe. He's 83 when they leave Egypt. Moshe was 80. I just think I love the idea because I think some societies, feel that if you get ahead in line, then I'm behind in line, and we really have to work on understanding that we can all help each other out. Competitive advantage. This is have the whole economic theory also, but I think it's a beautiful idea that v'racha v'samach b'libo, he'll be joyous. Now we just have 4 minutes. I want to get to one other really, really beautiful idea that's a little bit powerful. So if we go back to chapter 3, and this is a very famous verse, chapter 3, verse 14. Let's say verse 13. Chapter 3, verse 13. This was again when Moses is arguing with God at the burning bush, and Moses says, "Hey, hey, I'm coming to the people of Israel, and they're gonna ask me what's God's name. So what am I supposed to say?" God, Moses is great. He has some of the chutzpah that his mother has and that his sister has to really stand up. They stand up to Pharaoh. Moses stands up to God. So we need that little chutzpah. It's important. So then, verse 14, this is so famous. Eheyeh asher eheyeh, that I will be what I will be. And what does this mean? Reb Chaim of Volozhin, who lived in the 18th century, late 18th century, and then to the 19th century, was a student of the Gaon from Vilna and a very important leader. He's the founder of the Volozhin Yeshiva in Lithuania. So he wrote a book, Nefesh HaChaim, like the living soul, the soul of life, something like that, how you interpret it. And he has an idea that in some Kabbalistic way, Eheyeh asher eheyeh, in some ways, we make God who God is. Oh, heretical! It's heretical. But the idea is that we have some kind of influence on God. God is what we make of God to some extent, in some ways. In some ways, of course, Maimonides, everyone accepts God is perfect, God is unchanging. But it's a beautiful idea that we really motivate God and to get we really have an impact on God. Our prayers have an impact. And it's a very kiviyachol, they always say as it were, because of course God is unchanged, in classic Jewish philosophy that most of the medieval authorities accept God is unchanging, this, but I love this idea of yeah, sure, yeah. Like each and every one of us, we're not going to be necessarily the Moses, we're not going to be the Aarons, but yes, we really have an impact on this world and even on God in a certain way, in a very, very powerful way. And so, I think that I love that idea because I love empowering people, and every single person can feel that they can not only change the world around them, some of the people around them a little bit, but you can even in some ways change God. You are making God either happy or sad or strong or weak or that kind of thing. And you have other places that imply that actions of people weaken God. So we have 1 minute, just the end of this portion. As I mentioned, first the people believe, and then Pharaoh makes it worse for them. And in life, sometimes we try to do good things, we try to help things out, and then not everyone, it doesn't always work out, but God says, don't worry, stick with the program, stick with it, and we will make a difference. So I think I've left people with 30 more seconds, but I don't want to go over. And Mara, thank you so much for and not only moving the Sfaria, but clicking on the asterisk, so we have that answer.
Thank you so much, Rabbi, and thank you to the 200 plus folks who joined us today, and not letting one totally derail us. As always, your comments really are a light for this study together. We hope to see you next week, where we will continue the book of Shemot. But for now, wishing you a Shabbat Shalom, and thanks again, Rabbi. Bye
Oh,
bye.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Hopefully good news coming up. Good news
Amen.
Sunday and beyond.
Bye
Shabbat
bye.
Shalom. Thanks, Mara. Thanks, everyone.